Hello, and welcome to Voices Unleashed, in which we celebrate singers, artists, and other musicians, their influence on our community and beyond. It's a great privilege today to have with me Imant Raminsh. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Alexandra.
It's a pleasure. I have felt for a long time that my audience needs to have this opportunity to get to know Imant, even though there's a prolific amount of information and music on YouTube and elsewhere. But this is a very personal thing because over the years we have really become friends, and I have admired your music for so long. You may not know this, Imant, but before I even moved to Kelowna and lived in Chicago, I was made aware of your music. That's some 32 years ago.
Less, right?
Less.
Yes.
Yes, he doesn't like to be celebrated. Not that much. Too bad. Okay, so over the years, I have at first been so taken with the sounds of this composer, and then when I moved here, one of the first things that happened was I went to the Chamber Music Kelowna Society concert, in which you were commissioned to write a string quartet. Mm-hmm. And you may not remember this, hope you don't, but I was so taken, it was so compelling, I went straight home, picked up the phone and called you at your house and said, I love your music so much, which was a little forward, but then that's who I am. There you go. And then over the years, I had the wonderful opportunity to sing the obbligato line of the violin concerto. And right before I walked on stage, someone whispered to me, Alexandra, the composer's in the audience. And I thought, tell me that after I sing. Thank you so much. And then I have this wonderful music ensemble, Candeska, and we sang your Song of the Stars with the Okanagan Symphony Orchestra. So that's another exposure and a wonderful privilege. And they also sang for the youth orchestra that you were conducting.
Correct, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And after that, there was this beautiful piece that you gave me as a gift for them to sing. And until now, I don't think they could do it. But this year, they can do it. So with all that to say, I'm so happy to introduce you to Imant Raminsh. And let's get to know our friend without blowing his horn too much because he feels uncomfortable when we do it. But
Oh, no. Just go ahead as loudly as you want.
Okay, it's what's going to happen. Okay, I've got a few notes here to help me along because I just don't want to miss anything. But we're probably not going to be able to fit all this into 20 minutes, are we? Well, but we'll do our best.
No, your questions, you sent me a preliminary set of questions, and I thought, well, I could probably talk for about an hour and a half on each one of them. So,
well, we're going to have you back.
Well,
we do a whole Imant Raminsh series. It's great.
Heavens.
It's great. We'll just get sponsors and they'll pay for everything. This sounds great. It's a great plan. So you've had a remarkable career as not only a composer, that's how I was introduced to you at first, then conductor, violinist, and then educator as well. So I just wanted to ask you, how did this all begin? What were the pivotal moments that made you decide this is the thing you want to do with your life?
Well, I guess one has to go back to the very, very beginnings. My background, or my parentage is such that my mother was a concert pianist, trained in Latvia. Unfortunately, her career was disrupted by the Second World War. And my dad was a forester. He was a professional forestry engineer. And so when we came to Canada as refugees after the war, my mom, obviously filled the house with music. All my siblings and myself were encouraged to take up piano initially, and of course she had students that she taught. So music was always in the house, and my dad was an absolute lover of nature and all things wild and natural, and so now it's easy to say, well, this is where you get your music and this is where you get your love of nature. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit facile. I think that I think every child draws and develops from from influences provided by parents, but I think each person also develops his or her own interests and so on. But anyway, there. Now, so I did actually start as on piano, and I think my first composition stems back to the age of about 5.
Oh, wow.
Well, but you have to look at it. It's something to behold and admire. I was incredibly fascinated with ledger lines. You know, those lines that go up above the staff or below the staff.
Uh-huh.
So my very first composition, which I still have, it looks like a fire engine, with a ladder truck, notes up there and notes way down below, and totally, well, I don't know, maybe no, I'd say it's unplayable. Okay, but it's interesting to look back and see, where some of these little seeds might have sprouted from.
Absolutely. I mean, that's 5 years of age, and already with that sort of sense of going into that love of music, and you and Mozart, the two of you.
Well, yeah, but no, I think his compositions were actually playable.
Oh, okay, fair enough. And there is the difference, but not for long. Even though now one could argue that some of your music is playable, but not without a lot of rehearsal. I can attest to that for sure. It's playable, but it's beautiful to rehearse as well. And so you ended up from this very humble beginning to getting your repertoire played at Carnegie Hall. I mean, that's a big deal. And for those of you who've heard of the venue, Carnegie Hall, you kind of go, wow, Carnegie Hall. What's that all about, that Carnegie Hall thing? How did that happen?
Well, along the course of my long life, I have been really blessed with coming in contact with actually quite a number of influential people. This is nothing that I could have foreseen or that I could have pre-planned, but I have run into people like John Washburn, who's recently retired from being a longtime conductor of the Vancouver Chamber Choir, who was one of the first people who took an interest in my choral music. People like Dr. Doreen Rao, who's very influential in the children's choir movement in America and in Canada, and these are people that have seen something in my music that they could respond to, and so I guess I would call them my champions. But as I say, there have been situations like this where, with the best of intent, and I couldn't have engineered them. They just happened.
Yeah.
And so I've been, whether you call that some kind of divine intervention or just chance, whatever it is. On the other hand, I've also, taken I've taken advantage of opportunities that came my way.
Of course.
So the Carnegie Hall thing was incredibly wonderful. It was one of the highlights. I tend to think of life as topography, kind of ups and downs, and I think my life has had a pretty interesting topography, because I've had some downs, but I've had some incredibly high peaks as well. And definitely this would have been one of them, with my wife and daughter both being in the 170 voice choir on stage.
Oh, beautiful.
And me conducting my own work. So, it doesn't get much better.
No, that's definitely the apex. You founded several musical organizations, including the Prince George Symphony Orchestra, the Youth Symphony of the Okanagan, and the Aura Chamber Choir, which I've had the privilege of being the guest soprano soloist for that. What inspired you to establish these groups, and how do they reflect your commitment to nurturing musical communities outside of Canada's more urban centers? I mean, we're not in the center of things here.
Oh, but on the other hand, we are.
Are we?
Absolutely. When you are creating music with people that you like and that you respect and that you feel excited about making music with, that is the center of the universe.
Oh, I love that.
That's not
I love it.
The center isn't in Vancouver or Toronto or New York. The center is right here. So what do? You make music with people who are there, and if you see that there's a lack of some sort of organization, whether it's an orchestra or a choir, and you see that you feel that you're able to get that going, well, then you get it going.
That's awesome.
It's never, however, it's never a one man show. Okay, and so as long as you are aware of that and that you give credit where credit is due, I think so. So, for instance, with the Prince George Symphony, which used to be called the New Caledonia Chamber Orchestra, and I like that much better.
New Caledonia Chamber Orchestra.
New Caledonia,
New
it sounds
Caledonia.
well.
Sounds good.
With all due respect to Prince George, New Caledonia is bigger. but anyway, again, there was a group of amateur musicians who were keen to play, and I had some conducting skills and said, well, let's do it, and likewise here with the youth symphony, I thought, well, I mean, the opportunity was there, and I was there, and said, well, let's just do it.
Let's just do it. Well, that's a real impact on a lot of young people to have the opportunity to be under your baton, and the things that they learned in those years. I mean, those were very influential years for those young people. I say that because I know several of them who've gone on to pursue careers in music and talk about those years with great love. As a two-time winner of the Canadian National Choral Awards, because a lot of your music is really choral, this outstanding choral work that you've done, how have these recognitions actually, did they affect you personally, and did they shape your approach to choral composition at all? Or do you get these prizes and go, whatever?
Well, when I looked at that question, I thought, no, I have a short answer to that. No, I don't think they've affected anything. I mean, it's really nice to be recognized. And, for a moment, you think, oh, wow, I'm kind of at the top of the world. But then you have to really put things in perspective. By the way, your choice of the word under the baton, I have a bit of a problem with that.
I knew you would. I thought I was going to get away with it. It came out of my mouth. I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say next. I thought, I just said under the baton. He's probably going to check me on that, but let's just pretend. Okay, go ahead. I know you're right.
No,
you don't like that.
I don't think anyone is ever under the baton. That sounds like you're under some kind of a mill wheel or something.
True.
No,
I think maybe I felt like that sometimes.
No, I'm sure that there are conductors who feel that everybody else is under their baton. Yeah. No, the thing is, I've always said, by itself, that baton makes very little sound. And you can tap it, you can hear a little percussive sound, or if you, maybe a whoosh in the air. But the baton by itself is basically meaningless in terms of the overall musical event. If you don't have musicians with whom you can make music, as a collaborative thing, then
for sure.
Then that anyway.
Those that can respond to the baton.
But however, getting back to your previous question, the choral thing comes probably in my DNA. With my Latvian background, well, there are a lot of nationalities that whose prime mode of expression is singing.
Yeah,
and well, you know this from your own background.
For sure.
And Latvians get together every year, but every 5 years they come together in huge numbers to sing in a 25. I think there's a new venue now, but it's either 25 or 30,000 singers on stage. It's a huge, like an arena, almost like an arena, an outdoor arena. And I know that the Lithuanians do the same thing, and the Estonians, and I'm sure the Ukrainians do the same. There's an enormous power in singing, where I have nothing against instrumentalists, but instrumentalists are always trying to get their instruments to sing, as you know, and so the ultimate instrument is the human voice, as far as I'm concerned, or at least it has been in terms of my my music making career.
For sure. And then I remember violinist teachers telling singers, you know, singing teachers telling singers to sing like you're playing the violin. And then my daughter was taking violin lessons, and the teacher said, play your violin like you're singing. And they're informing each other with that legato phrase and phrasing itself, and in so many ways. But really, first and foremost, I think about you, I think about your choral works, and then I think about the other things and how the other things for which you wrote seem to be influenced by that singing sound, that phrasing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I really recognize and love. So you've been a performer, and you've been an educator, you've been a composer, and you've been one of the violinists in the Okanagan Symphony. And all of these things, do all those things influence your compositions, or does your composition, is it autonomous from all those experiences?
Oh, no. I mean, you know, when you put all the stuff together in the pudding, you know, it's, you know, you don't separate out the raisins, right?
You gotta eat the raisins.
No,
Right.
no. I mean, it's all interconnected, and you know, I've been really fortunate to be able to make music on all these different levels. You know, I mean, I think of somebody who's strictly a performer, you know, and that's all that they do, or somebody who's only a composer, and but you know, to be able to get in front of an audience and conduct one's own work, and
Right.
you know, I mean, what are you going to say? You know, I can't. You know, the grains of sand are too mixed up,
Right.
In order for me
Yeah.
to even want to separate them out
Exactly.
into.
Well,
different
imagine a
parts.
story where you're composing for the violin and then picturing yourself playing it and thinking about how it's to be played. You're experiencing it as a composer, but you're also writing with this very informed approach at being a player too. That's kind of a wonderful experience. That's beautiful. I really would love for us to listen to your first little clip. We've included some clips here. Your Magnificat. I think everybody who knows about you knows about this piece. And I'd like our producer, RJ, just to slip in about 45 seconds of this amazing piece before we continue talking about some of the amazing awards that you don't want me to talk about, but I'm going to talk about them anyway. This piece, I think, was one of the first pieces I ever heard that really was moving to me. So let's take a listen. I think that, didn't you set the Magnificat twice? Once like this and once then in English later? First for the mezzo to start and then later for the soprano to start?
No. This is just the one.
Oh, I thought you...
However, I did do another setting of the Magnificat, which was entirely a cappella.
Oh.
Which I don't know if it's ever been performed.
Oh.
But
sounds.
And then I also said it a third time.
Oh.
As a, you know, often the Magnificat and the Nunc Dimittis are kind of paired.
Yeah.
Right? And so I did a. So I guess you could say that I've actually done 3 Magnificats.
Oh, there you go. Not 2, but 3. 3. So the beauty of and the privilege to sing that. And actually, as I'm teaching my own ensemble, some of the works that you've composed, it's a pleasure even to rehearse them. They've all said to me that they get this joy in the harmonies, this resolution after dissonance, that whole thing. Or does the dissonance sometimes does it resolve to another dissonance? Sometimes, wait, Wolf does that. It's dissonant, it resolves, but is it totally resolved? We're not sure.
but ultimately resolution, right?
Absolutely.
So this is the nature of art. It's not just in music, but in visual arts as well. And I'm sure, I'm not an expert, but I'm sure that one could draw parallels in other art disciplines. Is that it's always an interplay between rising up and the building of anxiety and tension, and then the release of tension. Yeah. If I can give you a little example of that.
Please do.
I was asked to write a work by my friend Doreen Rao in celebration of the life of one of her co-workers or anyway her compatriots who had died, and so it was to be kind of a celebration of his life. And she specifically asked me to do a setting of Alleluia, Amen. And I thought, well, that's that. I could do that in like 2 bars, right? Alleluia, Amen. But no, I had to think about that, and then I realized these two words almost by themselves encapsulate all of life, because Alleluia is the opening out. Alleluia, celebration, opening out, and Amen is so be it, and the acceptance, right?
It's beautiful.
So I'm not sure that the work really captured that completely, but that was. Sometimes you kind of understand. You have to go beyond the words themselves.
Yeah, I love this idea. To me, it's almost the exhale and the inhale, the yin and the yang, the pendulum swinging, right? Sometimes people think that life's all about David and Goliath, and then David kills the giant, and then we're good, and the rest of our life goes smoothly. But I think it's more of this. I've had to sort of think about this and think about. Coming to terms with the swing, the back and the forth, the yay and the not so yay, right? The Alleluia and then the Amen. It's interesting that you mentioned this, because I definitely have been thinking about that quite a lot. So then after we were talking about your choral works, and then it's your violin concerto in 1997 and the bassoon concerto in 2000 that marked a real shift toward instrumental composition after a focus of choral works. And I don't know if that's true, because it continued. And the choral works too. But what was it all about when you started to write for instruments at that time?
Well, it's not entirely accurate that I started at that time. I had written other, choral instrumental works, choral orchestral works, and also it's independent orchestral works as well, but not many. The violin concerto came about. Well, I could give you really a long story, but. Which is actually quite funny in many cases. But my violin writing was noticed by Robert Davidovich, who was the concertmaster of the Vancouver Symphony, and he asked me if I would consider writing a violin concerto. Now, I thought, oh my Lord, am I a concerto person? Because there are different types of concertos. So I thought, well. Somebody like Paganini, writes something virtuosic and over the top and just show offy and lots of flash, musically not that deep. Or on the other hand, there's somebody like Brahms who writes a violin concerto, which is basically a symphony with an important solo part. And I'm not sure where I fit in that, but I'm definitely not the Paganini sort. So anyway, we agreed that I would write this work, and then I tell you, I spent many nights, sweating bullets about this. I think, think of the precedents. You have Tchaikovsky only wrote one, Beethoven only wrote one, Brahms only wrote one, Sibelius only wrote one. A lot of these composers who wrote one violin concerto, and then that kind of taught them a lesson.
Yeah, one and done.
I'm never going to do that again. So, but I finally came to terms with it, and I thought, well, I don't have to rewrite the Tchaikovsky violin concerto. He already did that. I don't have to rewrite the Brahms concerto. Besides which, he couldn't write mine.
Right.
So
love it.
So I'm going to do the best I can, and then that's all I can do. All I can do is the best I can. So when it was originally commissioned, or they talked about a concerto 20 minutes in length, I thought, well, I don't know what a 20-minute concerto is, because it maybe certain instruments where they kind of, lose, they can only go for 20 minutes, and they're, all
played out.
All played out. but most serious violin concertos are, half an hour to 40 minutes to even more. So the 20 minutes actually expanded to almost 40. Well, anyway, there's a long story beyond that. But when Davidovich was asked about it, he said, well, he thought that I had really kind of gone the limit.
Gone the limit.
So he had to really work at it. So, but just fine.
Well, you had a lot to say, and I appreciate that so much. It's amazing. We'd like to listen to our next clip. If RJ, if you're ready to just play our next clip for us, I'm not even going to set it up, but let's listen to this beautiful clip. A good example of the melodic string playing. What would you like to say about that piece? What would you like to say about that instrument? And you chose it as your instrument to play.
Well, I did. I actually took up violin at the age of 9. So I'm starting on an instrument that my family had well, they had acquired it in Germany during the refugee times in exchange for coffee and cigarette rations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then it was sent over. So I started on. So after piano, my next instrument was the violin, and I had a number of teachers, and I had some success in Northern Ontario where we were living, and then I was invited to come to study with Albert Prats in Toronto, rather. He was at that time considered kind of Canada's top violinist. What you just heard is the opening of my third. Was it third?
Yes. Third.
Third string quartet.
Yes, it was.
And well, I mean, that is part of me as well. That these many years of studying violin and also the viola. What you'll find in a lot of my string writing and also in my choral writing is that I tend to kind of empathize with the middle voices.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The underdog.
Well,
not really. I'm kidding.
No, we're not. No, I mean, now you're a high soprano.
That's right.
But
way on top.
But yeah, but I'm one of those dishwater baritones. But however, the mezzos and the baritones, we are the salt of the earth.
That's right. You keep us together.
That's right. We keep you together.
Yeah, you ground us. We're way up there.
Well, that's right. And I mean, true sopranos and true basses are rare, right? So
Yep.
anyway, so I've always had a strong feeling of warmth towards the middle voices, because so you'll find that the viola plays and the second violin play a lot of important roles in my writing.
I love that.
But then again, I think we're all humans and we're all equal.
We're all equal. Yeah. Before we hear our last clip, I did want to chat to you a little bit about this amazing thing that happened to you in 2018. You were appointed a member of the Order of Canada. That's no small thing. One of the country's highest civilian honors for your contributions as a musician, a conductor, and a composer. This recognition, especially as a Latvian immigrant who arrived in our country as a refugee in 1948, I'm sure it's difficult to put into words what that meant to you, but what is your response to this? What did that do for you, standing up there and receiving that honor?
It is a hard question to answer, because I don't, I could say that I had to order larger hat sizes after that.
And the buttons all popped off.
but since I rarely wear hats, I'm not sure that really was the case. Mary Simon is a lovely lady, and her husband, whom I met, and they have a dog named Neva, whom we met afterwards. So.
Right, you're talking about her dog, but she described you as one of Canada's most important composers during your Order of Canada Investor in 2022. How was this accolade influencing you going forward? I mean, how do you even live with yourself? So then the name of her dog, which is so endearing. I'm wanting to talk to you a little about, before we go, I want to talk to you a little about your love for nature. You've defined yourself as a naturalist, have you? You and your wife both lovers of nature, and I hear so much nature in your music. In fact, we together have worked on an opera that was commissioned for Opera Kelowna, of which I'm the founding artistic director. We started with The Sound of Loons, actual recorded loons, after which you echoed it with the clarinet, I believe, at that time. And then there was a funding issue, and the 17-piece orchestra turned into 3 pieces. Anyways, never mind, that's another dramatic story. But I wanted to chat to you just before we go about this connection you have with nature. You mentioned it was your father, it's in your DNA. Speak to us a little bit about this connection.
Yeah, the opera that you're referring to was Lake of Tears, and
Yes.
Specifically the theme was these loons. I don't know. I'm not a very religious person. I would say that I have my spiritual side, I suppose. But when I look around and I see the incredible miracles in nature, I mean, how can one not feel, both elevated but also very small as such a small part of the picture. One of my favorite poets is Wendell Berry, who's an American poet. He styles himself as a farmer, he lives in. His post office box is post office box number 1, Port Royal, Kentucky, and he's a farmer, but he's also a poet and an essayist and just an incredibly thoughtful person. He speaks about the peace of wild things and the incredible mystery of life and the joy and we can't explain what it is. Life is this ineffable thing that really can't be put into words. Absolutely. And so each one of us, whether we're a visual artist or a dancer or a singer, we're always we're looking for that way to interpret this magic of being alive so I I don't imagine there's anybody who hasn't gone into some special natural place and not felt the wonder and the seed opening to a little seedling, or the wind in the boughs, and you know, that's where, if there's a God, that's where God is. It's all around us. And
Absolutely. I feel so much the same as you in that regard. I feel that that's the catharsis of my life, to get outside and just walk in nature and find whatever that is. It's not a particular group of people that I attend, this sense of miraculous and divine. And the concert that's coming up, this is a great segue, and I'm going to plug. Was that pretty good? Really good plug. The next concert at which you may want to hear Imant Raminsh's repertoire is a concert called Nature and Divinity. And it's coming up on May 24th. My Candeska, my ensemble of women, will be presenting two of your works. One, which I'm not sure it's ever been performed before, this I Thank You, God.
Actually, you need to know that poem, which is not, was printed on my our wedding invitation.
Oh, my word.
Becky and I, who's my favorite poetic collaborator, and I are celebrating 50 years.
Oh, congratulations! 50 years in June. And the piece is called I Thank You, God, for Most This Amazing Day.
Yeah.
Right? And we are going to attempt to perform that with Imant, hopefully, and his beautiful wife and daughter, everybody in the fam coming to see that. And we're also going to perform Vestigia, of which we have a quick little 45-minute clip so you can hear this piece as well, Nature and Divinity, coming up May 24th. And we'll end with this clip. Thank you so much for being a part of this show.
It was a pleasure.
And I will look forward to seeing you May 24th. Tickets on Eventbrite. And thank you so much to all of you listening who care about the arts in our community and beyond. Thank you so much, RJ. And enjoy this little clip as we make our way out. See you next time.